Welcome back, Algebra 1. We're in lesson 75 today. We're going to talk about writing the equation of a line. So the equation of a line has some specific parts that we need to understand. So this is the equation of a line. So let's look at this. Y equals mx plus b. This is called the slope-intercept format. It's also called the y-intercept format because this tells me where on the y-axis this line crosses. So that is why we like this format, is because it's really easy to read. It makes our life a whole lot easier when we're trying to graph a line. And the point that tells us where on the y-axis that the line crosses is this plus b right here. This is the y-intercept point. And what this does is this tells me the value of y when x equals 0. So what that means is whatever this number is, and you include the sign is always included, whatever this number is, x is 0 and y is going to be your b. That's always going to be the first point that you graph. Now, sorry, got a little bug in my throat. M right here, I'm going to use a different color for that. M, this is the slope of the line. It is defined as the change in y over the change in x. Okay, and all that means is the difference from one point on the line to another point on the line in the y value and the difference between the x values. So that means what you need is 2 points, and change or difference means subtraction. So you're going to subtract 1 point from another point. You're going to keep the y's on top and the x's on the bottom. And the way you do that mathematically is you pick point 1 and you say y1 over x1 minus, and then you pick a point 2 and you put the y for that point over the x, over its x, and then you subtract. And that is how you find the slope of the line. That tells you how steep or how level. It tells you what that line's angle looks like on the system. So let me give you an illustration of that. Let me draw a quick little system right here. And I'm going to give you a simple little slope. Let's say we have a line. Let me put it down here in blue. Let's say our line is y equals 2x plus, let's say 2. Y equals 2x plus 2. Okay. So we look for the plus b first. All right, this is our plus b. So this tells us our very first point is going to be 0 when x is 0. This is the y. So that's going to be a positive 2, right? You don't have to put the positive sign in there. I just included it for the sake of clarity. 0, positive 2. So on the y-axis itself is 0. So x is 0. And y is going to be positive 2. So 1, 2. That's your first point. That is where the line crosses the y-axis. So now, how do we graph the rest of the line? We look at the slope. This point right here, this is our slope, right? This number next to the x, not the x itself, but the number next to the x, that tells us what the line looks like. What does a 2 tell us, Miss Tracy? Well, remember about what's true for fractions or for whole numbers, is you can turn any whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. So this is your slope. If you have a whole number, you just turn it into a fraction by putting it over 1. So that tells you the change in y over the change in x. So what we do is on the y-axis, we look for what's going to be different. This is a positive number. So that means that it's going to go up, because on the y-axis, up is positive and down is negative. What's below the x-axis is negative. What's above the x-axis is positive on this y-axis, right? We know that. These are positive numbers and these are negative numbers. So if we have a positive slope, then it makes sense that it's going to go toward the positive side of the Cartesian coordinate system on the y. So if our slope is y is positive 2, then we're going to go up 2 on the y-axis, right? But that's just one part of our fraction. The other part is the bottom, is the 1. That's the change in x. And x is always going to be positive. Why? Because it's a denominator. And it holds true for fractions. Whatever you've learned for fractions holds true for slope, that the denominator is always positive in a fraction. Well, in the slope of the line, because it's a fraction, the denominator is always positive. So this is always going to move towards the positive sign of the x-axis, or the positive side of the x-axis, which is to the right. So this is always going to move to the right. If it's positive, this moves up. If it is negative, it goes down. But x is always to the right. So because this is positive, this went up 2 spaces. Now we're going to go to the right 1 space. So we went up 2 spaces on the y-axis, over 1 space on the x-axis. So this is up and down is y, and to the right is x. So positive 2, positive 1. You can start to already see the angle of the line. Look at that. You're getting a line right there. And I can make it a little bit more perfect. Let me make sure it's right through those points. So now that it's right through those 2 points, you can already see where that line is going to sit and what the angle is just by knowing the plus b and the m, the slope. You don't have to really know the other points. You can just visually look at the slope and say, okay, so this one went up 2 and over 1. So this one is going to go up 2 and over 1. This should be the other point right here, right? Can you see that? You see where those points are going to sit, and you didn't even have to do any calculation. You just looked at it and counted the spaces based on the slope of the line. So this is why being able to understand the parts of this slope-intercept format is so important. It's going to save you time, and it's going to save you effort, because you're not going to have to calculate x and y for every point. All you have to do is just look at it and count the number of spaces, and you can draw a line. And that is what's awesome about the slope-intercept format. So let's practice a couple of these lines and see what we can do. Let me clear this. If you haven't written all of this down, you need to do so, because all of this is important. So pause and write it down, and then I'm going to clear the page. So let me get a couple of Cartesian coordinate systems on here. Let me start here. Okay, so let me give us some lines. All right, so this is going to be y is equal to 1/3 x minus 2. And then I'm going to do one in blue. That is y is equal to 2/3. I did not write that correctly. Negative 2/3 x minus 5. And let's do one more. Let's do a green line. And let's say it is y, oh, I didn't do the green, hang on. Y is equal to, what do we have here? What's my other line? All right, 3x plus 4. There's our other line. All right, so let's do the red line first. First, let's take it apart. I have a -2 for my b. So it tells me my first point is going to be 0, -2, right? For this line, my first point is going to be 0, -5. For this line, my first point is going to be 0, +4. Do we see all that? Just by looking at this point, you know where it touches the y-axis. So the red one starts at 0, -2. So this is -1, this is -2. This is where this first point lives. Now let's look at the slope. The slope of this line is 1/3, and it's positive. So it tells me that the point goes up 1 space on the y-axis, and then it goes over to the right 3 spaces on the x-axis. 1, 2, 3. This is that line. Let's make one more point with this line. Up 1, over 3. 1, 2, 3. Excuse me. We could already see that line starting to form, right? So this is that line. How cool is that? And these are our points. So let's label these points. 0, -2. You always want to label your points. This one is going to be 3, 1, 2, 3. And this is -1. And then this point is 4, 5, 6. So 6 on the x. And it's 0 on the y, because it's right there where it crosses the x. So those are our 3 points. So let's look at something interesting about this, okay? If this is, remember our table where we used to solve for y and x? If I put in x, and I draw my little table here, and I put in 1/3 x minus 2, that's my formula. And then this is my y. My first point I always pick is 0, okay? If I put in 0 for x, 1/3 times 0 minus 2, 0 minus 2 is -2. What's my first point? 0 minus 2. Did we have to do all of that? No. All we did was put 0 with this little plus b number right here. That was our first point. We didn't have to calculate anything. Now, I always recommend when you're doing a table that you find a multiple of the denominator on your slope, because it's going to be easier to divide whenever you get there. So that's what this did naturally for us. So let's pick 3 and let's pick 6. So if I put 1/3 times 3, which is the value of x, minus 2, 3/3 is 1 minus 2 is -1. Isn't this 3 and -1? It is. All right, if I pick 1/3 times 6 minus 2, I get 6/3. That's 2 minus 2. Isn't that 0? And isn't that the same point we picked? Just by looking at the slope of the line and counting our spaces. We didn't have to do all of this. It did it for us just by starting at the y-intercept and counting the spaces here and the spaces here. So 1 space up and 3 spaces over. 1 space up, 3 spaces over. And we didn't have to do any of this. But it's the same thing. It is the exact same thing. So let's do the blue line. So our blue line, our first point is 0, -5, because we just paired 0 with this little point right here on the end. That's it. Oh my goodness. So -5, -1, -2, -3, -4. This is -5 right here. I'm going to move this down here out of the way. Okay, so looking at our slope, I'm going to have to make this line a little bit longer, and you'll see why in just a moment. All right, so we have a -2 over 3. So it's a -2 over 3, so that means it's going to go down 2 and over 3. That's what that means. So we're going to go down 2 and over 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Here's our next point. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Here's our next point. There's our line. That's what that looks like. Now, remember, if we have a negative slope here or here, which way does it go? It goes down from left to right. This is going down, so it matches our slope. It is, in fact, a negative slope. And if we look at this one, this is positive. It's going up from left to right. So it's a positive slope, just like our fraction, our slope in the format dictates. So let's do our green line. Let's see what we got with that. So first off, right away, we see 0, 4. That's our first point. So we come up here and we find 0, which is the y-axis, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our first point. What is our slope of the line? Miss Tracy, we have a slope of the line that's a whole number. How do we turn a whole number into a fraction? We put it over 1. So this is positive, so this means it's going to go up 3 and to the right 1 space. So I'm going to have to make this line a little bit longer. There we go. So if I go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1, that's where the next point is. Let me scooch down a little bit so we can see some more. If I go up 3 from here and over 1, 1, 2, 3, over 1, that's where that line is. So now my line is right there. So you can see all you need to graph a line is just this little formula, and you could tell where it starts with this number here. It's 0, and whatever this number is y. And that's where you put that point on the y-axis. And then you look at this number here. If it is a whole number, you turn it into a fraction by putting it over 1. If it's already a fraction, then it tells you exactly what to do. And the top number is the y value. If it's positive, it's up. If it's negative, it's down. And you move that many places up or down on the y-axis, and then you move this many spaces to the right, and it is always to the right. The denominator is always positive, so you're always moving towards the positive side of the x-axis. So that's to the right. So you don't need to calculate all these points anymore. You can just look at the line and say, okay, 0, 4, 0, 4. Up 3 over 1. Up 3 over 1. Up 3 over 1. Up 3 over 1. And keep doing that over and over and over. There's your line. Done. Then all you have to do is go back and know how to read. This is a 1. This is a 2. This is 3. This is a 4, right? So know how to read your points. This is a 4, so 0, 4. You label your points. Then if you're going up 3, right, you're increasing the y value by 3. So this is going to be 1 and 7. Right? This one is, if this is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, this is 2 and 10 because this is on the x-axis 1, 2, right? 1, 2, and this is the value lines up with 2, just like that. And that is how you read the slope of the line and how you graph the line. Okay, so always know that if it is going up from left to right, it's positive. If it's going down from left to right, it's negative. And you can tell the shape of that line, whether it's going to go up or down, just by looking here. If this is negative, then this will be negative. If this is positive, then this will be positive. All right. That is all I have for the slope of the line. If you have any questions about that, then just give me a holler. The only other thing I'm going to add is that when this goes down, this is called sink. And when it goes up, it is called rise. And X, because it always goes to the right, it's called run. So you can have rise over run, or you can have sink over run, depending on the sign. Sink is negative, rise is positive. Okay, Run is always positive, so it's always over a positive. All right, that's all we have. I will see you guys in lesson 76.